So, let's talk about this 870. The full story. So, we found this machine in 2020, I want to say. It had like 2,500 hours on it. It was a decent price. It was right down the road. We specifically hunted this one down because it's a 1 year only. This is the one and only year that they had a Kubota common rail diesel with a high pressure pump, a DPF, no, I don't even use this stuff, I can't think of what it's called, no def. Supposed to be a good motor. Kubota, it's a B3800, which is the same motor that was the year prior, but it was mechanical pump, and I believe those still had a DPF. And the year after is a Doosan, and we were told, don't buy those are junk, which in hindsight, I disagree. I'm not saying this 1 year model has problems. We definitely weren't lucky with ours. Now, being a 1 year, there is some weird things that I learned that even the dealerships don't understand. But as far as I'm aware, the harness, the wires, the computers, some of that is the same as the older Kubota motors. Now obviously this one's going to have different stuff for the high pressure pump, since the old one's all mechanical. But as far as the cab and joysticks, I think that's even the same as the Doosan stuff, but I'm scared to say that for sure. So we found this with like 2,500 hours on it. It's a hoss. I mean, when it does run, it's a hoss. My biggest complaint with the machine, if nothing was wrong with it, was every time I was ready to quit for the day, that's when it wasn't going to regen. It never went in regen in a good time. Now, after running a few hundred hours, we bought it with a manifold leak. Oh, it's no big deal. Then it started dripping diesel. And then I noticed a lot of motor oil around the turbo area. So we sent it to the Bobcat dealer that is west of me. I'm not going to name names just because I don't want to start all that drama, but if you know where I'm at, there's a dealer west of me, there's a dealer south of me, and there's a dealer north of me. Now, the dealer north of me, I won't go anywhere else but them from here on out. The dealer north of me was a year out on the shop because they're good. The dealer west of me was like, yeah, bring it today. So I thought, oh great. I had more problems than they fixed. When I got it back, I ran about 5 minutes and it died. I lost fuel prime. I just figured it was an air pocket. Primed it and thought it was fine. And then I took it out on a job and it died 3 or 4 times. It was running out of fuel. And I finally got enough prime in it, loaded on a trailer, bring it home. I took the T870 out there and got done. And it took me 3 or 4 weeks of tinkering. I never committed a full day to it because I was too busy. But I bought a service manual and just did everything I could here and there to get it right. So what I had learned, and I'm getting ahead of myself. When I first got it back from the dealer, I noticed the EGR was not even bolted up. It was just flopping. So I found the gasket in the bottom of the motor. I put 2 bolts in it and it's been good ever since. But that I was not pleased about. I took this machine back to the dealer twice for the fuel issue. And the last time I brought it straight from the dealer to a job and it died. The boom was up, I pulled the release, and just the way I had it sitting, it wouldn't go down. So I was stuck in the thing, couldn't get the door open. And I was like, you know, it's got to be fixed. I mean, I know it's out of warranty and it's old, but I paid to fix it and it's worse. And the guy's like, we don't have a mobile mechanic, you'll have to call the dealer south of you, because the dealer north of me is across the state line, I'm not supposed to go up there. And he's like, you'll have to call the dealer south of you, and they've never been any help. I don't go there, because I mean, the guys at the parts counter is nice. Outside of that, and they're like, well, we can't send a service truck out unless you're going to pay for it. which I understand, but the dealer screwed this up and put a hurting on me with it, so I wasn't very happy about that. So, brought it home and went and talked to my boys in the dealer north of me. Almost said it. Dealer north of me, and they said bring it up here and we will bill the labor to the dealer that screwed it up. So took it up there. They did their best. Like I said, this is a 1-year machine and it's got some weird stuff. So, and this was almost a year ago now. So I'm trying to remember it all. I believe I brought it back and it died again. And so what I had found, the first thing I found wrong was a bad cold weather fuel bypass. There's 3 variations they put on these motors, just this 1 year. There's one, it's a straight through block off that just deadheads the fuel and it has to backtrack around. Then there's 2 kinds that are T. The first T they came out with was junk. The second T works if it's plumbed correctly. So the dealer west of me replaced the one with the original somehow. They don't even make them anymore. I don't know where they got them. Then they tried the new style, but it was backwards. Then the dealer north of me put the new style on them, but because all these hoses go everywhere when you can't see them, they didn't know it was plumbed backwards. So I finally figured out the way that routes. And what that does is, and I've never seen a setup like this, the fuel, after coming out of the rail, either goes back to the tank, or if it's too hot, the valve closes and it pushes it up to the fuel cooler and returns it to the tank. Most fuel coolers I've seen cool before it goes to the pump. But I guess if you cool the fuel after on its way back to the tank, then it's cool enough to go into the pump on the return trip. So I found that wrong. Then I found, I guess it was algae, but it looked like somebody shoveled leaves into my fuel tank. I'll put a picture of the filter up. It's the worst fuel filter I've ever seen. So I changed all the filters. And then I learned that they're not here anymore. The original Bobcat lift pump, if you will, is junk. It puts out like 3 to 4 PSI. And this V3800 Kubota, and the Caterpillar, the Kubota, and the Takeuchi, they all run 15 to 20-ish PSI pumps. So I switched the pump to a higher pump. Then I put another inline fuel filter on because they were just coming up filthy. We did pump the tank, filled it. That seemed to fix that, but those pumps were still clogging for some reason. So changed the big fuel filter again. And I actually ended up putting 2 pumps on here. They're pushers, they're not pullers. So we got one to push through the inline filter, and then one to push through the big fuel filter. Well then, I had it running, and I was actually driving down the road to a job, and it died at a half tank. And so we were suspecting that the fuel pickup and return were reversed. And the only thing I knew to do was just flip those. But once I flipped those, it fired right up, and as far as fuel issues, it was fine. So the dealer west of me had the return and feed flipped. The tank got filthy there because I only run green fuel, and all my green fuel is clean, and I run it through an LML with a CP4, and it's been fine, knock on wood. I've never had fuel issues, especially as bad as this. So I think the dealer west of me is so small, they had stagnant fuel with algae in it. Then the pump was bad, the return was plumbed wrong, and the filter was clogged. So pretty much every low pressure fuel issue you can have, I had. I don't know if it trashed injectors. I didn't get that far. So I finally got this figured out. Look, the day I figured out the reverse feed and everything, and I actually took a minute and crawled up in there for the first time, first time paying attention to the fuel lines, and they were backwards. What? So, that day, I was putting red clay and riprap in the spillway of a dam on a 3-acre lake. I'm downhill dumping, and I see white smoke start pouring out from behind me. And I look at my screen, and before I can do anything, it says engine oil pressure extremely low, shut down. Shut down. So I shut it down, or it shut down on its own. I got out, looked it over. We weren't on fire, there wasn't anything pouring out. It all looked normal. So I got back in, turned the key. Nothing's burning hot. I mean, I would have noticed, but nothing's hot. I just bucket works with no Harley brake, no mulcher, nothing like that. So I thought, well, I need to get it on level ground. So I started, and I'm looking at it, and it just immediately, it's just screaming at me. Engine oil pressure extremely low. And I flipped to that screen because the warning's flashing. Flip back to the screen, it's 0 pounds. So I just cut it off. No oil leaks, not low on the oil. It has, this oil filter says 2737. And I looked at the screen when I drug it in here, it said 2,800 hours. So there's like 3, and it sat there. So I don't know if you've ever tried to move a dead T870. They don't have sun gears. You can't access the sun gears in the drives. So it's just 13,000 pounds of dead weight. And the bucket was full of clay. It had sat there in the rain, and it just had stuck real well. So I popped the bucket off with the levers, let it sit. My buddy's uncle has a D5K. And we backed it down in that hauler. Tracks the whole way. We ended up changing it real short. He didn't have rippers on the back. We changed it real short so the dozer kind of picked up on the back of the machine, and she drug her out of there, but it was tough. And there it sat for probably 6 months. Probably 6 months. Been busy, been trying to figure out what we're going to do. It was on land we had putting the house up, so it wasn't in the way. And the mobile mechanic I was going to use was busy building a new shop. So nobody wanted to screw with it. I certainly didn't want to, and I don't blame nobody for not wanting to screw with it. So they finally needed to move. So we took my buddy's wheel loader. Tried to pick it up. It didn't want to do it. So I went, got T300, got it from the other side, and those two machines picked it up actually rather well. Of course, the T300 wasn't doing the work the loader was, but we needed it. So back the gooseneck under it, hauled it sideways, got it home, got it pushed in here. So now the next thing is, what are we going to do? And to answer that question, I don't really know. I haven't torn into it. I'm not excited to tear into it. My service manual is like this thick, and I've read it cover to cover, and none of it is fun. I mean, just these skid steers in general are bad, and this one is huge and heavy and tight, and a 1 year. So if someone says, oh, well, on the 870s you got to do this and this, well, it probably doesn't apply. Yeah, it's just not, it's not going to be fun. And on top of that, I've got a swash plate issue, which what that does is swash plate, to my understanding, tells the computer what the drive motor is doing. And the issue we're having is it's out of calibration somehow, some bushing in there is shot. on the, I want to say, right drive motor. So that sensor thinks the drive motor is going into catastrophic failure, and to try to prevent metal shavings from going to the main pump, it shuts down. So whenever you turn right, well, sometimes when you turn right, it's gone, just like the oil pressure, shuts itself off. And when you're in 2-speed, and if you're not buckled in, you're gonna smack the windshield with your head. It hurts. And the guys at the dealer north of me tell me that you can replace those bushings, but they're just gonna wear out again, and you need to put drives in it. So it almost needs a drive. And at that rate, 2 drives. Because I know as soon as I hook one drive in it, and a whole motor, the other's gonna do the same thing. So what I have is a clean type 2800 hour machine with brand new tracks. Rebuilt, all 4 cylinders are just rebuilt. Which, the only reason they all got rebuilt was because one of the wipers on this cylinder right here got trashed and it started spraying. So when we rebuilt one, just rebuilt them all. And other than that, besides the engine and the drive motor, it's great. But the engine and drive motor is kind of what's important. So we're gonna pull this motor out somewhere here, try to video as much of it as we can, and see what happens with it. And maybe do some cool stuff, like a bigger cooler, while we're here. We'll just see if we're even gonna fix it. But right now, it's in the shop. And we can finally start working.